Okay, so we're going to start over on the cell-mediated immunity side. And we just talked about how helper T cells produce cytokines. Now, cytokines, they actually don't attack the pathogen directly themselves. They just attract other cells. So we'll write that down. You can think of them kind of like guard dogs. So like when you have someone walking by your house, whether they're actually going to break into your house or just walking by, a guard dog will most likely bark and attract attention. Just like cytokines, when these are produced, they'll attract other cells' attention, and so that will bring them to the scene. For example, cytotoxic T cells will be brought over to the scene because they'll be called over by these cytokines. So because cytotoxic T cells are a type of T cell, just like helper T cells, we're going to just use red again. Now I'm just going to use a darker red to show they're a little bit different. Now cytotoxic T cells, you can kind of hear their name, cytotoxic. They are going to inject the pathogen with a toxin. So they're like little assassins. They have these little structures sticking off of them that look like, I don't know, they could pop a balloon, and they basically do that. They go up to the pathogen and they poke the pathogen directly, breaking the cell membrane of the cell wall, and therefore the pathogen can't really survive with holes in itself, so ends up dying. And this is the cell-mediated immunity because these are going to go directly up to the pathogen themselves and kill them. So let's draw our little cytotoxic T cell. And here's its little points sticking off of it that are going to inject the pathogen with its toxin. The name of this toxin that it injects them with is called perforin. Just going to inject them with perforin. And we'll also add a little assassin-looking face to it. And we'll label this as our cytotoxic T cell. Injects the pathogen with a toxin. Okay, so that's cell-mediated immunity. Now we'll go to the other side, and what the cytokines are going to alert as well are B cells. I'm going to use blue for these B cells, and these also don't directly attack the virus, just like the cytokines. They're instead going to just duplicate to start. So these are just going to show up, and they do have a nucleus. And they're just going to start to copy, and then once they start copying, they will differentiate into different types of B cells that have different jobs in terms of helping with this immune response. So we'll go down to the side. Some of these B cells, these B cells will duplicate and become plasma cells. I didn't mean to do that, so we'll just draw it first. I'm going to use the same color, blue, and draw these plasma cells. They are a type of B cell. The only thing I'm going to do is just like add some kind of differentiating factor. I don't know, you can do whatever you want. I'm just going to draw like a line or two there just to show it's a different type of B cell. And these plasma cells, struggling with my spelling, plasma cells produce antibodies. So antibodies tend to be represented like this, little Y-like structures. And the fancy name for these antibodies is immunoglobulins, and so immunoglobulins, and there's a bunch of different types. So you'll see these written as IG something, IgM, IgE, IgG. Those are all types of antibodies. And depending on the pathogen or the type of antigen that enters the body, different ones will be released to attack it. You can think of these as like a car boot per se, because sometimes what these can do is they can just go and attach to the pathogen and basically keep it from doing its job. So like a car boot on a car, when the police or I don't know, the safety enforcers or law enforcers put that boot on your car, it's still a car, but it can't do anything. And for pathogens or viruses, what this means is that they're going to die. If they can't do their job, they can't copy, they're just going to die off. And so they hold them in place like that. Some of them also will attract other cells. So we'll label these as antibodies. And we can write attract other cells or trap pathogens. Okay. So those B cells up above can also differentiate into memory B cells. And this is where we get that immunity, so that if you get infected with the same pathogen a second time, it won't affect you. So memory B cells and memory B cells remember the pathogen. So we'll add a little memory bubble up here and show our pathogen inside of it. And these are awesome because then next time you get this pathogen, what these memory B cells will do is they remember the type of antibody your body needed to use to fight these off. It will release those right away or cause those to be released right away and fight it off faster or fast enough so that you don't get any problems from that pathogen again. For example, like the chickenpox has only one virus that causes that. And so if your memory B cells can remember what they used to fight off that, you won't get the chickenpox a second time. So all of this, like, I don't know if any of you guys have heard of those, like, 2 parenting ideas, whether, like, when your child's little, you want to coddle them, make sure they don't get hurt, wash their hands a million times, carry around sanitizer and wipes, and you don't want them to get any germs because you don't want them to get sick. Or you can be the type of parent who's like, let my child do whatever they want. If they want to lick a doorknob, they can lick a doorknob. If they want to eat dirt, they can eat dirt because they're young, they have healthy immune systems that can fight off infection, and then they can get all these illnesses while they're little, and they'll never have to get them again when they're older. They can build up immunity while they're young instead of when they're 80, and it could be pretty troublesome. So, I don't know, whichever you would prefer. But before we finish off, and I think I'll just leave it at 2 videos instead of 3, so I can kind of fit it at the end here. What I want to talk about is vaccines. So when you go to the doctor and you get a vaccine, there's been a lot of talk about vaccines in the news and the hope that we can make one for coronavirus. What you're essentially doing is you're paying them to inject you with a pathogen. And this pathogen is typically attenuated, which means it's weak, or a dead one. And what it's going to do is it's going to start to create antibodies to fight it off, and hopefully your memory B cells down here will be stimulated as well, so that later on, if you ever get it, your body will be prepared and be able to fight off that infection pretty quick. Now, you probably will get a little sick, a little feverish. That's why a lot of times when people say they got the flu shot, they end up getting sick after. Yes, a much lighter sickness and a much less painful sickness than if you were to get the full flu. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to talk about is HIV. So HIV is something we're familiar with most likely as well. And what HIV does is it actually is going to hijack your cytotoxic T cells over here. So basically, it's not going to let your cytotoxic T cells kill anything or do anything. And therefore you only have your antibody immunity system or antibody mediated defenses at work. Now, with just these at work, you can barely even fight off a common cold, which means that you could get a cold and you could die from a common cold because your cytotoxic T cells or your cell-mediated immune defenses are not able to work. So we have that going on too. All right, awesome. That's the end.